अस्सलाम वालेकुम वरहमतुल्लाहि वबरकातुहू। वेलकम बैक। आज हम लोग कंटिन्यूएशन रखेंगे। पिछले हफ्ते आपने देखा था फैसल मंजू साहब को, और उनको हमने फिर से गुजारिश करी थी कि वो आप फिर से आएँ और आप लोगों को वो बता सकें इस्लामिक फाइनेंस इन मोर डिटेल। थैंक यू सो मच फैसल भाई फॉर कमिंग अगेन। कोविड के ज़माने के अंदर आज आपको हमने फिर से खींच के ले आए हैं, तो बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया आपका फॉर ज्वाइनिंग अस।
जिम्मेदारी है।
थैंक यू सो मच। थैंक यू फैसल भाई का आपको थोड़ा सा और जिस तरह पिछले हफ्ते आप लोगों को इंट्रोडक्शन भी किया था, मैं आप लोगों को बता दूं। ही इज़ अ शरिया स्कॉलर, इस्लामिक फाइनेंस एडवाइजिंग इंस्टीट्यूशंस, PhD in Islamic and pension law, lecturer, lawyer, consultant, born in Mauritius, Indian origin। एजुकेशन उन्होंने साउथ अफ्रीका से ली थी, और जो उन्होंने मास्टर्स एंड सो सो फोर्थ किया है वो UK से किया है। थैंक यू सो मच फैसल भाई फॉर ज्वाइनिंग अस। अच्छा फैसल भाई, पिछली दफ़ा हम लोग बात कर रहे थे इस्लामिक मोर्गेजेस की एंड सो फोर्थ, उसके ऊपर ही हम लोग ज़रा कंटिन्यूएशन करेंगे।
बेशक।
अच्छा, कैन अ मुस्लिम टेक अ कन्वेंशनल मोर्गेज इफ इट इज़ चीपर? देखें, एट द एंड ऑफ द डे इट इज़ ऑल अबाउट इकोनॉमिक्स। व्हाट इज़ योर व्यू ऑन दैट? What is the Sharia view on that?
I will not say my view. I will say what the great scholars have said.
Yes.
Have to chote aadmi hai. Okay. There are two views on that, which I have seen. I've read a lot. One group is a straightforward, a no-go zone, because it is haram, and haram means haram. There is what we call qat'un nusus. That is, riba is haram. It is infested with riba. Therefore, we got no choice. The other group are of the view that under fiqhul aqalliyat, that is Muslims staying as minorities, we have to not say compromise Sharia, but make things easy. Those who say it is haram, they are straightforward on that. They say, this is the Quran. You cannot make something which is haram become halal. It is haram, it's haram. So either you try to get an alternative, or you don't have it. Rent your house. That is one position. The second position is no. Let's look at the social dynamics of what is the meaning of a house in the life of a Muslim. Let's look at the wider picture of a Muslim staying in UK. The challenges of getting a house on rent, right? For example, if you stay in one house, as you know, usually your rent will be 6 months or 1 year max.
That's right, absolutely.
Then they tell you pack up and go. Okay, you move to the other house with your children, your wife. Now, what about the education? What about your wife readjusting and yourself?
And it's the whole aspect of the disturbance in life.
Exactly.
Because, you know, it's not easy moving houses as well.
Yes.
And, you know, in Islam, I think we are supposed to be progressive people.
Yes.
Historically.
So, keeping this in mind, some scholars, more specifically, the European Council of Fatwas and Research in 2000, the year 2000, they made a resolution. And I think we must look into that as well. It is a view. Very well-known, famous scholars are sitting on those panels. They take the position that they reinforce, and I want to emphasize on that, they reinforce the position of those say it's haram, no-go zone. That is it.
That is a very hard line approach.
Yeah, that is the way. They are not compromising. Haram is haram. Haram doesn't mean halal. Then they say, they give a series of solutions what should be done. For example, one of the solutions is Muslims set up their own construction firm to bring down the price, etc., which are very good ideas. Then they say, after giving so many advice, they say that, okay, if all those things cannot be done, and there is a dear necessity, and that's very important in Islamic jurisprudence, the rule of haja was zarura. Let me explain those two terms.
Please, please.
Darura means when you are faced with a certain level of difficulty where your life is in danger, or a system will collapse to stop that. Therefore, what is haram, you make an exemption of that. You don't make it become halal. You become an exemption. And the Quran, there are 5 verses of Quran they brought forward to justify this position. For example, if you are dying, you can eat haram.
Yes, you can. Absolutely.
Right? So haram remain haram, but to save your life or the system, then it's allowed. The Quran is from the Quran as well. The second concept which we need to appreciate is haja. So one is necessity and one is a need. The need is that your life is not in danger, but is a high level of discomfort. It's not easy.
And disturbance, absolutely.
Yeah. I give you an example. For a Muslim man to have gold, it's not permissible. There was a Sahabi.
To own gold or to wear gold?
To wear gold.
To wear gold.
To wear gold, right. So this Sahabi, he had a problem with his nose and he was cut in a battle, something to this effect, and then he wore a copper one which can accumulate moisture. Rasulullah advised him to use a gold one. So gold is haram, but the level of discomfort, it was allowed. Same thing you will find, for example, with silk, and where they had to, some Sahabi, they had lice and so on, silk was allowed for them. So from there, you can see the practicality of things, all right? So this is a legal position, but they went deeper into it, and this is where the contextualization of the problem is important, because what they say is look at the wider society, the role and importance of having a house, the role and importance of consolidating a person, and the role of enriching the community, and all the things. For example, if you look at the report on the demography of the Muslim of UK by the Muslim Council of Britain, based on the previous census, it's quite alarming if you look at the position of the Muslim. Yeah.
So elaborate kare.
For example, the level of unemployment.
Yes.
Health.
Education.
It's quite serious. We need to do something.
Yes.
Right? But that is another topic. So we have to look into it. Actually, I'm eager to see the latest census. What is the report on that? Has there been a change? If there has been no change, that is something very serious now.
And has
after
it been
10 years, if we see no change, we got to scratch our head. What's going wrong with us in this country?
We have to address it, absolutely.
Of course, that is another debate. Let the experts address it, right? So when we look at all those dynamics, then you get other group of ulama who are of the view that based on those legal principles, they have allowed it. They have elaborated it. It's quite a long fatwa they have issued. And one ruling come to mind, which is not related to Islamic finance. Our late Dr. Badawi, Zaki Badawi, in 1995, gave a fatwa about organ donation. 1995, and there has been so many reluctance. And look at the fatwa nowadays. Yeah, the major shift, because the reality down upon the community, right, where most of the organs pro rata to the population, with the Muslim are taking that.
That's right.
Yeah, so we have to. I'm not saying to make haram become halal. Na'udhu billah min dhalik. That's not my position. But some people, as is, if you make a survey, whatever be the fatwa outside there, majority of people are going with the conventional.
They are?
Now
Indeed.
you're telling them you are doing haram. Of course it is haram, but we don't give the other side of the coin. So we have to expose the views to the people. By the end of the day, the person is responsible to Allah. Not to me, not to you. He knows what position he is in. Our job is, my job is to say, look, these are the two sides
to the coin. And I think a common sense must also prevail.
I want to raise one issue without offending anybody. I apologize for saying that. We are hammering people for something which is a necessity for some people. We have looked at the social problems and so on. But when we have a car, we are taking an insurance policy. which is haram, you want to know it, or not, look at the Majmu' al-Fiqh of Jeddah, All India Fiqh Academy, look at the Fatwa of Sheikh Taqi Usmani. It is haram. But why are you taking that? Why we don't apply, why we want to apply the rule of need and necessity here? Why you don't take an Uber? Why you don't take a taxi? Why you don't get a bicycle? I mean, let's be realistic. We cannot cut and paste and decide according to our desires. When we want to make something haram, it's haram, haram, haram. And this one now, because it suits us, no, it's a rule of necessity apply because we need our car. No. This is why the Quran says, أَرَيْتَ الَّذِي مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ. Have you not seen those people who have taken their desire to be their deity? The Arabs in those days, Ayyam Jahiliyyah, they were finding one rock, for example, says, this is my deity. They go a bit further, they see the other one is more beautiful. Let me make this my deity. So we're developing this attitude. We have to be a bit careful because we got to worry about the awam.
Absolutely.
So we want to have a car. For us, this policy is halal because zarura. We don't want to travel by Uber. We don't want to take a taxi. We don't want to take the bus. Despite the contract is haram, when the poor Muslim there who needs a house, the point I'm trying to raise here, I'm not saying go and take a conventional mortgage. I'm exploring the situation here. I'm giving the example of organ donation, how it was and how it changes. And we have to contextualize it. Riba is haram. I'm not saying riba is halal. La. I'm saying there are two positions on that, and the people must be exposed to both.
And that's one of the reasons why we have this program, where we can actually now let people know in terms of where we are with Islamic finance as well. But like I said, like you said, there is a choice, and I think people need to make their own minds up. There is a school of thought where they say it is okay to own one property on a conventional mortgage. There is another school of thought where it says absolutely no way. And those are very hardline situations. So, but I think up to the individual, because at the end of the day, we ourselves are answerable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yes.
And that's...
I mean, I know myself putting this in public, people will be against me, I know. Some senior ulama will say, what are you talking on TV? I'm taking an informed decision on that. I will accept if you get upset with me, but my conscience say you got to give the public the choice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Acha, giving them the choice. Obviously, Islamic finance is one of the choices, okay? What I want you to do is tell us a little bit, if you can elaborate more into Islamic mortgage structure, how that works, and how we can actually go that route as well.
Okay.
Where we can actually make a profound choice.
Islamic mortgage is not a new product. In the 1980s already started. Yes, those people who don't know, right? In London, we had products in 1980s already, right? It was a murabaha structure whereby if you want to buy something, we say, okay, this is the cost price. We reveal the profit we're making. We buy it and we sell it to you with a fixed profit. This is why you call it murabaha, from the word ribhun in Arabic, which means profit. The profit is predetermined, very important. And of course, you get 20 years to pay. So basically, it's like your fixed rate of interest, but this one is not interest. As I explained earlier on, the difference between riba and interest, profit, is what I mentioned earlier on. For profit, Ibn Arabi mentioned, I mentioned that last time, if you remember, the famous Ibn Arabi says that, number one, al-kharaj bid-daman, you got to take the liability on your head if you're selling it. You must take the risk in it, al-khulm and the kasb. The effort goes in it. So Islamic Bank must do that. At least in theory, it must be there. What happened in practice, I heard a lot of things which are not palatable. That is another story altogether. But in theory, this is how it's supposed to be. The Islamic Bank must take the responsibility of losing it. This is what you call the PLS system, profit and loss sharing. So when they buy it,
they have an interest in the property.
Yes, so they are taking a risk, then they sell it with you. This is wahallallahu al-bay. That is one product that they developed in the 1980s, but it didn't take off. Then
why didn't it take off? I mean, with the great, it sounds to me like a very good, okay, the bank is actually taking, instead of putting all the liability on one person, what the bank is then doing is say, okay, so profit and loss share, we're going with you. Why didn't it take off? Actually, it should have been far more popular than your conventional mortgages, where you're actually taking most of the burden. Not most, you're taking all of the burden.
Yes, I mentioned that last time. We have a lot of awareness to create. People don't know. The bank marketing, if I was not in academia, I wouldn't even know this type of product existed.
Yeah.
It's true, because I'm academia, I did the history of it. This is where I come to know about it, right? So Manzil, the title, I think the project was Manzil, if I remember, yeah. So I think it was Kuwait Bank who did that, if my memory serves me well. Then came late Sir Eddie George in 2002, who attended a conference in Loughborough, and where he interacted with many governors of central banks. This issue was raised, and late Sir Eddie George, who was the governor of the Bank of England, took the challenge. He said, okay, if it is something feasible, send your project. And this is where they sent it, and it was restructured, because now we got far more literatures on it. We understand the market better. More market survey was made, and there was a feeling. And this is where Islamic Bank of Britain is a pioneer in that. We congratulate them for that. And now it's known as Rayan Bank and many other banks. There are 5 corporate banks with Islamic finance banking. Yeah. So they, and HSBC, of course, when those big companies like HSBC, Lloyds came on board, it gives a different dynamics to that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And they came with the concept of ijara wal iqtina. Ijara wal iqtina means you tell the bank, this is the house I'm interested in. The bank makes you sign a paper that you will lease it with them, because what the purpose of, and then you run away. So the bank got to cover its risk. So you sign that, and they will lease it with you for a period of time. When that period is over, say 20 years, they have to pay X amount of rental, which capture the capital and the profit they ought to make. Therefore, they tell you, okay, here's a house for a take-on fee. Now, there are various models on that, but I'm talking in the UK context here. For example, Islamic Development Bank, they won't tell you to buy it, they give it as a gift. Some of the products they have done. So you don't have to sell it. After it is over, you give it as a gift. But in England, they tell you to give a small amount of money and you make the transfer. It's a sale. So it is a lease combined with an option to purchase.
At the end of the term.
Yes. So it's not 2 contracts in one. There's a principle in Islamic jurisprudence. You cannot have 2 contracts which are interrelated, interlinked. There are some rules on that.
So technically speaking, what you're really doing is you're leasing out the property, so you're paying a certain amount of the profit and loss thing, and then on top, in terms of the principal amount.
Yes.
That's what the concept is.
Yes. So your rental will capture your rental, the capital and the profit, and they will use the benchmark like LIBOR. That is another debate. I don't want to go in LIBOR now. In any way, LIBOR will be removed very soon. That is another debate. We're going to get another benchmark called SONIA. That's another debate. This is one product, which is very interesting because you are leasing it, and the risk is with the bank, technically. We must do operating lease. In other words, that's a very important ruling, that is the bank that takes the risk of is an infrastructure problem. They must fix it up, not the tenant. Right.
Okay, so, all right, okay. So if there are any issues with the Islamic mortgage, if you negotiate something, it would be the bank's responsibility to actually look after the structure of the property.
Structuring problems, etc. They must, the lessor under Sharia must take that risk. Okay. As compared to financial lease, where it transferred not from the bank's balance sheet to the owner. They carry the risk.
That's right.
And there is a lot of costs and so on involved there. So again, I say theoretically, practically what the bank does, another story. Now we got to look at the contracts. The second one is what you call diminishing partnership. That is, you put 20%, even for the rent, you got to put a deposit.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Of course, absolutely.
I don't go in the mathematics of it now, the modeling, I don't do that. So you're going to put a deposit, the bank say 20%, the bank put 80%, you co-own it, and this is why you call it diminishing partnership. So when you pay your installment, systematically, the bank's ownership decreases
And
your increases. But because you're staying in it, you are paying a rental. That again is in theory. In practice, they put it in a trust. Right? Now the trust on it, this is another mechanism they have used. There are some fiqh debate on that. I don't want to go into those details, but that's the practical side. When you pay over 20 years, so your share has increased, the bank has received the money, so the bank now would transfer it on your name. They go to the deeds office and transfer it.
At the end of the term.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But that's a pretty straightforward and simple.
So this is what in most countries they use that. And these are 3 products. The reality is, with this type of products, unlike a conventional mortgage, there are layers of contracts in it. That's what makes it a bit intricate for the layman to understand. That is another reason why they go for the conventional. They say, we can't understand all those things, right? Because there are various layers. I'm going to make a lease. After the lease, I get an option to buy, and then I will have to sign another contract to buy. You understand? So at times it becomes a bit complicated. So we got to make that easy for people, because what is happening in practice, the bank becomes the owner. If there's something wrong, technically the bank got to fix it up according to Sharia, right? There's a big debate about even the insurance of the house. Who takes it? If you are the lessor, you're supposed to take the insurance, not the lessee.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, from a Sharia point of view, now if they take that, so these are small.
What actually happens practically? Is it yourself?
They try to shift it on the, as far some of the contracts I've seen, they try to shift it on the lessee.
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
Or the
That's
client,
to the bank's advantage.
Yeah. So that is some interrogation mark, and this is where some people get confused. They say, but then what is the difference between a conventional and a Islamic? But there are fundamental difference. The bank is taking a risk. For argument's sake, the bank buys it, and this is where the government helped us on that. They removed the double stamp duty in 2002, if my memory serves me well, or 2004. So it's that the government want to help us. And England spearheaded this whole thing. When England did it, the whole world started following. Besides Malaysia, all the Muslim minority countries started following, because London is the hub.
It is, absolutely. It is the
so when London
hub.
something, it means something. So the authority did facilitate it, and we are grateful for that. If not, the bank will have to pay stamp duty, then the client pays stamp duty.
But there are some backtracking as well going on in terms of HSB has withdrawn their product as well, haven't they?
No, that is not because of Islamic finance. That was, they have closed few endeavors of theirs. Even in Japan, they have. That's not only for Islamic finance. They had to restructure. It is restructuring of HSBC.
Okay, it just seemed as if it was coming down on us.
No. I don't think that was the intention of it. Because this was not performing as it ought to perform, they closed it down.
And you know, Islamic finance on the whole just makes pure sense, where the bank is actually taking the risk. You are, you know, technically speaking, giving them a certain something. Okay, good, excellent. Thank you so much. That was actually very, you know, when you give these examples and everything else, it just makes it so much easier for people to understand. And I'm so grateful for that. Do we really need to own a house? Or should we rent until we can afford one? Or do we find an Islamic solution? And then if an Islamic solution, I mean, you know, like you said, I mean, I think as far as conventional mortgages are concerned, you know, you have the option, especially with the fiscal policies that the government, you know, and even the monetary policy is phenomenal at the moment and has been pretty static for the last decade or plus. But you know, in terms of, you know, the 5% deposit where you can actually find a conventional mortgage, I think it's just that bit more difficult for Islamic mortgages, where the 5% deposit is obsolete. Am I right in saying that? Or the 5%, I wouldn't say deposit, I suppose, risk.
The people, I mean, government is giving, you know, for the first-time buyer.
But that is only for conventional mortgages, am I right in saying?
Yes. Again, the reason, again, this is why it's very important to understand the structure of the, yeah, it doesn't apply for Islamic finance. You're right. It's clearly mentioned there. The reason is because the risk factor, the bank is taking a risk. The structure is different.
Okay,
right?
okay.
So you raised a good point, actually. We have to think properly to get a solution. What is 20% and what is 5%?
I mean, there is a massive difference, and I think that is one of the reasons why the Islamic mortgages haven't really, although the concept and everything else is certainly on par, but they haven't really taken off, simply because of the financial commitment that the purchaser has to make as well.
Yes.
And
there are research on that, surveys carried out. That's a pure reality, and I can give you enough reference as an academic. Few surveys carried, field surveys, where we interviewed Muslims. They are not interested with Sharia product. They are interested first, the price.
absolutely.
Second, the service. If they are happy with that, then they will go for the Sharia compliance. We got to reverse that. It's a big effort to be done, right? Because if this goes on like this, it's not only here. In many countries, surveys have been carried out. People will look at the price by the end of the day because you are an economic man. What we call in economics is a homo economicus, the person who is in the market, got greed in him. He's supposed to behave rationally, what is good for him, and he has his own self-interest to satisfy. Adam Smith theory, basically. And then you got the homo economicus, who is a nice person who wants to follow Quran and Sunnah. He won't spend his money unnecessarily, etc. Reality is, not everybody is homo Islamicus. When it suits us to be homo Islamicus, it's okay. When it suits us to be homo economicus, that also is okay. It's a question of consumer behavior on the market.
It is. And, you know, can we just touch on this? I mean, do we really need to own a house?
Look,
or should we just rent until we can afford it?
Last time we met, we touched on that, if you remember, where we discussed about the concept of
owning
debt.
a house.
To have a debt is not something palatable, a long-term debt. We have mentioned the ahadith, etc. The main point that I raised was the commitment. If you don't have this commitment, it's problematic. To have a debt on your head for 20 years is not a child's play.
No, it's not.
It's not easy. You wake up with this, when am I going to pay it? When am I going to pay it? As a good Muslim, you want to pay it, right? Now, if you have the commitment, you work it out, and couples are working, they feel quite safe to pay it, and that money is not going lost. Because if you work it out, I have worked it out, if you're going to take a mortgage, the amount you pay, Islamic mortgage, it will be cheaper than a rental. For example, I just did a survey last week for a house. If it was to be paid a rental, it would have been 600 to 650 pounds for 2-bedroom in Leicester.
I was thinking ये 600 to 650 कहाँ होता है? क्योंकि लंदन के अंदर तो इस तरह का कोई चक्कर नहीं है जी.
And if it's going to be a mortgage, it's going to be 450. Right.
It does automatically mean it's far more affordable to actually go that route.
And you can decorate the house, you can change it to do what you want. Like we discussed last time, the concept of second, which means the peace, the way you want to live. So if you can have this commitment, fabiha. But if you are doubtful, say you are 60 years old, you got cancer, na'uzubillah min dhalik, you want to take a mortgage, I will tell you, no, bhai, what are you doing, right? Who will you're leaving problem with other people, right? Then, of course, there are some fatwas on that, which I have read in UK. I don't want to mention name of ulama. They say the door of rent is still here. You can't touch that mortgage. Now, if it is Islamic one, again, I put interrogation mark on some of the things happening. And I'm not the only one. I can give you enough people who have written on that. I don't want to go into those details. But it is the better of the two evils, if you want to call it this way. And it is definitely a better choice for us.
Faisal bhai, we're going to continue this. नाज़रीन, हम लोग एक छोटी सी ब्रेक पे जा रहे हैं. ब्रेक के उस पार मैं और फैसल मंजू साहब आपका इंतज़ार करेंगे. और we will continue this discussion. I hope you're enjoying it. Like I said, कि आप लोग info@iqra.tv के ऊपर ज़रूर अपने questions भी भेज सकते हैं, and we'd be more than happy to answer them. ब्रेक के उस पार आपसे मुलाकात होती है. शुक्रिया.